today, and I'll be making a hanging sleeve for your quilt or wall hanging. And this is just a wall hanging that I made a few years ago, and I did make a sleeve for the back of it, so I'll show you that. And then I'll show you step by step how to make one for any size quilt. So let's get started. Here's the front of the wall hanging, and then I'll flip it around to the back. And it's kind of hard to see because I used the same fabric on my backing as I used for my hanging sleeve. But I'll just show you. That's what it looks like. And it's about 4 inches right here. And you can see that it puffs up a little bit, and I'll show you the technique to get it to do that. So there's room for a dowel or a curtain rod in there. And you simply sew it, hand sew it, on each side, the top and the bottom, and then along the edge right here on each side. Today I'll make a hanging sleeve for this table runner, and you may recognize this. I did a tutorial, several tutorials on how to make this. I decided it would be nice to be able to hang this table runner as a wall hanging as well as use it on the table, so I'll put a hanging sleeve on the back of it. I've flipped the table runner over. Here's the back of the table runner. To determine how long you need to cut your strip of fabric, all you do is measure the top edge of your quilt, and you measure it from inside of your binding, and then you add 2 inches. So this measures 14.5 inches plus 2, so I'll cut my fabric 16.5 inches long. And here's a strip that I've cut 16.5 inches long, and I've cut it 8.5 inches wide. That's a fairly standard width for the hanging sleeve. Now I'll take this over to the pressing area, and I'll hem each of my short ends. Again, this is my 8.5 inch edge. I will just flip it over so the wrong side is facing up. And I will fold, and I'll do this on both edges. I will fold a 1/2 inch and then press, and I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but I will check with my measure a little bit more. That looks good. And then I will fold it again. And press. And I'll flip it around and do the same exact thing on the other edge, 1/2 inch, and press. Again, flip it again. Now I'll take it to the machine, and I'll sew a 1/4 inch seam right along here on each end. I have my 1/4 inch presser foot, and I will tack down my stitches with my back stitch. And I'll tie off. And I'll repeat that on the other end. Now fold it lengthwise, wrong sides together. Right in half. I've pinned it in place. Now I'll take it to the machine and sew a 1/4 inch seam all across the top. Again, it's important to secure your stitches with a back stitch. keep it lined up. And lined up the best I can on the end. And again, secure the stitches. Now I'll open up the sleeve and I'll place that seam that I just sewed right down the center of the back of the sleeve like so. And I'll go ahead and open up the seam and give that a press. And you have to play with the end a little bit just to get it to be flat. And then I'll also crisp up these edges. Now the sleeve is complete and ready to attach to your quilt. And I'll place this hanging sleeve about 1 inch down from the top of my wall hanging. And this quilting line right here is actually almost exactly 1 inch. So I'll just go ahead and line up my sleeve along that quilting line. And you can see that it fits right in between these two bindings. And I've placed the sleeve so the seam line is on the back of the quilt. I've placed a couple of pins to keep the sleeve in place, and now I will hand stitch the sleeve to the quilt along this top edge to begin with. And I'll just show you a little bit of the hand stitching. All I do is I use a coordinating thread, and I like to use a double strand of thread. I don't know if that shows up. And then along this fold line, right along here is where I'll be sewing. And I'll just kind of hide the knot within the sleeve. And all I do is stitch as close as I can to the fold line. And I go through, it's kind of hard when I'm holding it, but I'll do the best I can. And then I go through and I pick up some of the batting and the back of the fabric. And then I pop it back through again on the fold. And I just make sure on the back that I haven't gone through to the back of the quilt. And then I just pull it through. And then I would pop in the needle pretty close to where I just came up. Again, staying on the fold. Pick up some of the batting, check the back, and pull it through. And I'll just continue all along the top of the quilt. After you have the top hand stitched, now you can deal with the bottom, and this is where you make the sleeve a little poofy. So this folded edge here, we're not going to just sew it down at the folded edge because then the sleeve would be just lying flat. So what you do is you simply pull the sleeve up like so, all the way across. And you want to pull it up so this fold line is about 1/2 inch above the bottom. So in essence, you're making a new fold line. And if you want to use a little measure to gauge, you can. That's about 1/2 inch. And then all I do is pin it. Make sure it's lying flat again. So make sure it's down 1/2 inch. If you can see the fold line right here. It's a little bit shorter than 1/2 inch. and pin. And so at this point, what I like to do is go ahead and press a new fold line right along here. And I'm just careful to not press over my pins. Just press and repin. And that way, after I press this, I have a nice crisp line to do my hand stitching on. Now to finish off, all you do is hand stitch the same exact way that we stitched up at the top. Stitch along here, and then once that's completed, stitch the bottom of the hanging sleeve on each side. Stitch that down as well, and you've completed your hanging sleeve. So there you have it, a hanging sleeve for your quilt or wall hanging. And if you don't have the same fabric left over that you used on the backing of your quilt, that's okay. Just use any coordinating fabric that you like because it's not going to show. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.